Hey guys, in this video we are going to be doing long division, and I'm going to be using polynomials instead of the regular numbers that we're used to seeing in elementary school. Now, just for a reminder for you guys of what that long division looks like, you would have something that looks similar to this, and this might look very, very familiar to most of you. And then if I wanted to divide 10 by 2, I'll figure out, okay, if I divided 10 by 2, the answer would be 5. And that 5 is what we call the quotient that goes at the top. And I'm going to make sure to label the name because I'm going to be using these names, these terms throughout this video. And as I continued on showing my working, I would multiply the 5 by the 2, and that answer would go here. And then I would subtract, and in this case I would get 0. Now the 2 in this problem here is called a divisor, and the 10 is called a dividend. Okay, and our 0 in this case is pretty much would be our remainder. Now you know that if this was a different number, you would just say, okay, well, it's the remainder 1. Now remember, we would keep doing this dividing process until the remainder is less than the divisor. Okay, and so that's pretty much your refresher of long division from elementary school. Now let's go ahead and apply this to a polynomial. Now pay very careful attention to this process because it does require patience and it does require focus. So if there's any noise around you or anything that might be distracting, I would just encourage you to go to a place that's a little bit quieter because it will definitely be helpful as we go through this problem, okay? So let's go ahead and get started. The question that we have before us today is going to be x cubed minus 3x squared plus 5x minus 3, and that's going to be divided by x minus 1. Okay, in this case, our x minus 1 is going to be our divisor, and so that would go in the same position as it would in a regular, long division problem with just numbers. And our numerator is going to be our dividend. And our answer is the quotient, of course. Now, let's go ahead and set this up similar to how we would if we were in elementary school. Okay? So you have x minus 1, and then x cubed minus 3x squared plus 5x minus 3. Now, this process is very redundant. So there is, of course, a trend that you're going to see. And what you're going to do is you're going to always start with the first term of your divisor. And that is what you're going to divide into every term in your dividend step by step. Okay, what does that mean? Well, I'm going to start with the first term in my dividend. I'm going to divide the first term in the divisor by the first term in the dividend. Now, if you don't know how to go about working with exponents, because, x cubed, that's a base with an exponent. In the next term, negative 3x squared, that's an exponent. If you're not sure how to deal with exponents, I want you to make sure you go ahead and review that first before going through this video. Otherwise, it's going to be a little bit confusing for you. And I'm not going to explain the concept of how you divide when it comes to exponents, okay? And you can also check out a link for that in the description box below when I post that video. But until then, there's other options out there to figure out, how you work with laws of exponents. Now, let's keep going. X cubed divided by x, that answer is going to be x squared, and that goes at the top. That's a part of our quotient. And what you would do then, similarly to what we would have done or what we did in the previous long division review from elementary school, you would multiply that by every term in your divisor. And that answer would go on the second line underneath your dividend. So x squared times x is x cubed. X squared times -1 is negative x squared. And from there, you would subtract. Now, because we're dealing with two terms, you want to put it in parentheses so you don't confuse your signs as you're doing this, okay? Now, x cubed minus x cubed is simply going to be 0. And then negative 3x squared minus a negative x squared is the same as saying negative 3x squared plus x squared, which is going to be negative 2x squared. Okay? Now, if you're not sure about that, you probably want to do some review first and pause the video at this point. But if you are, let's keep going. Now, we're going to start that process all over again. Okay? We're going to go ahead and divide our negative 2x squared by the first term of our divisor. Negative 2x squared divided by x is going to be negative 2x. And then from there, you multiply that negative 2x by both terms in your divisor. And that answer is going to go below that line that we stopped at, which is below our dividend. Okay, so negative 2x multiplied by x is negative 2x squared. Then negative 2x multiplied by -1 is positive 2x. Okay? Now, the next step here is to subtract. Remember, we're going to put in parentheses to make sure that we're dealing with our signs in the right way. Negative 2x squared minus a negative 2x squared is the same as saying negative 2x squared plus 2x squared, and that is going to be 0. With the next term, you're probably wondering, well, what do I subtract the 2x from? Well, if you look right above it, the next term that you have not dealt with comes down, and that becomes the number that you would use in this situation. So it's going to be plus 5x, and that plus 5x is what you're going to be subtracting the 2x from. This might be a little bit more clearer as we do more examples. So 5x minus 2x is going to be plus or positive 3x. Now we're going to repeat the same process again that we did earlier. 3x divided by x is 3. Then we're going to multiply 3 by every term in our divisor. When we do that, 3 multiplied by x is 3x. 3 multiplied by -1 is -3. And then we go ahead and we subtract. Now, at this point is actually a good point where, or even before this, you can actually bring down the next number, which is pretty much the -3. So it will be 3x minus 3. You can do that at that point or before. But like I said, as we do more examples, I'll perhaps be able to clarify that a little bit more. But we're going to go ahead and subtract. 3x minus 3x is 0. And then -3 minus -3 is the same as saying -3 plus 3. And that is also going to be 0. So in other words, our remainder is going to be 0. So the answer then to this problem, given above, is going to be x squared minus 2x plus 3. Now, if you're not sure if this answer is correct, maybe you messed up somewhere, maybe you made a mistake. Well, the quotient multiplied by your divisor should give you back the dividend. What do I mean? Well, if you took a look back at what we did earlier with the elementary recap of long division, The quotient was 5 and the divisor was 2. If we multiply 5 by 2, we should get back the dividend, which would be 10. So therefore, in this case with the problem we did using the polynomials, if I multiplied my quotient, which is in this case here, the x squared minus 2x plus 3, if we multiplied that by our divisor, which is x minus 1, then we should get back the original dividend, which we have here, x cubed minus 3x squared plus 5x minus 3. So you can go ahead and check that out. What I'm going to do, instead of doing another example in this video, I'm going to post another video that has another example or another few examples of how we do long division with polynomials.